You are not the kind of guy who would be at a place like this at this time of the morning. But here you are, and you cannot say that the terrain is entirely unfamiliar, although the details are a little fuzzy. You are at a nightclub, talking to a girl with a shaved head. The club is either the Bimbo Box or the Lizard Lounge. It might all come a little clearer if you could slip into the bathroom and do a little more Bolivian marching powder. Then again, it might not. There is a small voice inside you insisting that this epidemic lack of clarity is the result of too much of that already, but you are not yet willing to listen to that voice. The night has already turned on that imperceptible pivot where 2 a.m. changes to 6 a.m. You know that moment has come and gone, though you are not yet willing to concede that you have crossed the line beyond which all is gratuitous damage and the palsy of unraveled nerve endings. Somewhere back there, it was possible to cut your losses. But you rode past that moment on a comet trail of white powder and now are trying to hang on to the rush. Your brain at present is composed of brigades of tiny Bolivian soldiers. They are tired and muddy from their long march through the night. There are holes in their boots, and they are hungry. They need to be fed. They need the Bolivian marching powder. Something vaguely tribal about this scene. Pendulous jewelry, face paint, ceremonial headgear, and hairstyles. You feel that there is also a certain Latin theme, which is more than the fading buzz of the marimbas in your brain. You are leaning back against a post which may or may not be structural with regard to the building, but nonetheless feels essential for the maintenance of an upright position. The bald girl is saying this used to be a good place to come before the assholes discovered it. You do not want to be talking to this bald girl, or even listening to her, which is all you're doing, but you don't have your barge pole handy. And just at the moment, you don't want to test the powers of speech or locomotion. How did you get here? It was your friend Tad Allagash who powered you in here, and now he has disappeared. Tad is the kind of guy who certainly would be at a place like this at this time of the morning. He is either your best self or your worst self. You're not sure which. Earlier in the evening, it seemed clear he was your best self. You started on the Upper East Side with champagne and unlimited prospects, strictly observing the Allagash rule of perpetual motion, 1 drink per stop. Tad's mission in life is to have more fun than anyone else in New York City, and this involves a lot of moving around, since there is always the likelihood that you are missing something, that where you aren't is more fun than where you are. You are awed by this strict refusal to acknowledge any goal higher than the pursuit of pleasure. You want to be like that. You also think he is shallow and dangerous. His friends are all rich and spoiled, like the cousin from Memphis you met earlier in the evening who refused to accompany you below 14th Street because he said he didn't have a low-life visa. This cousin had a girlfriend with cheekbones to break your heart, and you knew she was the real thing when she never once acknowledged your presence. She possessed secrets about islands, about horses that you would never know. You have traveled from the meticulous to the slime. The girl with a shaved head has a scar tattooed on her scalp that looks like a long sutured gash. You tell her it is very realistic. She takes this as a compliment and thanks you. You meant as opposed to romantic. I could use one of those right over my heart, you say. You want, I can give you the name of the guy did it. You'd be surprised how cheap. You don't tell her that nothing would surprise you now. Her voice, for instance, which is like the New Jersey state anthem played through an electric shaver. The bald girl is emblematic of the problem. What the problem is that for some reason you think you are going to meet the kind of girl who is not the kind of girl who would be at a place like this at this time of the morning. When you meet her, you are going to tell her that what you really want is a house in the country with a garden. New York, the club scene, bald women, you're tired of all that. Your presence here is only a matter of conducting an experiment in limits, reminding yourself of what you aren't. You see yourself as the kind of guy who wakes up early on Sunday morning and steps out to pick up the Times and croissants. You take a cue from the arts and leisure section and decide to check out some exhibition, costumes of the Habsburg court at the Met, say, or Japanese lacquerware of the Muromachi period at the Asia Society. Maybe you'll call that woman you met at the publishing party Friday night, the party you did not get sloppy drunk at, an editor at a famous publishing house, even though she looks like a fashion model. See if she wants to check out the exhibition and maybe do an early dinner. You will wait until 11 a.m. to call her because, unlike you, she may not be an early riser. She may have been out a little late at a nightclub, say. It occurs to you that there is time for a couple sets of tennis before the museum. You wonder if she plays, but then, of course, she would. When you meet the girl who wouldn't, etc., you will tell her that you are slumming, visiting your own 6 a.m. Lower East Side of the soul on a lark, stepping nimbly between the piles of garbage to the marimba rhythms in your head. On the other hand, any beautiful girl, specifically one with a full head of hair, would help you stave off this creeping sense of mortality. You remember the Bolivian marching powder and realize you're not down yet. First, you have to get rid of this bald girl because of the bad things she's doing to your mood. In the bathroom, there are no doors on the stalls, which makes it tough to be discreet, but clearly you're not the only person here to take on fuel. Lots of sniffing going on. The windows in here are blacked over, and for this, you are profoundly grateful. Up, 2, 3, 4. The Bolivian soldiers are back on their feet, off and running in formation. Some of them are dancing, and you must do the same. Just outside this door, you spot her. Tall, dark, and alone, half hiding behind a pillar at the edge of the dance floor. You approach laterally, moving your stuff like a bad spade through the slalom of a synthesized conga rhythm. She jumps when you touch her shoulder. Dance! She looks at you as if you had just suggested instrumental rape. I do not speak English, she says, after you ask again. Français? She shakes her head. Why is she looking at you that way, like there are tarantulas nesting in your eye sockets? Are you by any chance from Bolivia? Or Peru? She is looking around for help now. Remembering a recent encounter with a young heiress's bodyguard at Danceteria, or was it New Berlin, you back off, hands raised over your head. The Bolivian soldiers are still on their feet, but they've stopped singing their marching song. You realize that we are at a crucial juncture with regard to morale. What we need is a good pep talk from Tad Allagash, who is nowhere to be found. You try to imagine what he would say. Back on the horse. Now we're really going to have some fun. Something like that. You suddenly realize that he has already slipped out with some rich hose queen. He's back at her place on Fifth Ave, and they're doing some of her off-the-boat quality drugs. They're scooping it out of tall Ming vases and snorting it off each other's naked bodies. You hate Tad Allagash. Go home. Cut your losses. Stay. Go for it. You are a republic of voices tonight. Unfortunately, the republic is Italy. All these voices are waving their arms and screaming at one another. There's an ex cathedra riff coming down from the Vatican. Repent. There's still time. Your body is the temple of the Lord, and you have defiled it. It is, after all, Sunday morning. And as long as you have any brain cells left, a resonant patriarchal bass will echo down the marble vaults of your church-going childhood to remind you that this is the Lord's day. What you need is another overpriced drink to drown it out. But a search of pockets yields only a dollar bill and change. You paid 10 to get in here. Panic gains on you. You spot a girl at the edge of the dance floor who looks like your last chance for earthly salvation against the creeping judgment of the Sabbath. You know for a fact that if you go into the morning alone, without even your sunglasses, which you have forgotten because who, after all, plans on these travesties, that the harsh, angling light will turn you to flesh and bone. Mortality will pierce you through the retina. But there she is, in her pegged pants, a kind of doo-wop retro ponytail pulled off to the side, great lungs. As eligible a candidate as you could hope to find this late in the game, the sexual equivalent of fast food. She shrugs and nods when you ask her to dance. You like the way she moves, half-tempo, the oiled ellipses of her hips and shoulders. You get a little hip and ass contact. After the second song, she says she's tired. She's on the edge of bolting when you ask her if she needs a little pick-me-up. You got some blow? She says. Monster, you say. She takes your arm and leads you into the ladies. There's another guy in the stall beside yours, so it's okay. After a couple of spoons, she seems to like you just fine, and you're feeling pretty likable yourself. A couple more, this girl is all nose. When she leans forward for the spoon, the front of her shirt falls open, and you can't help wondering if this is her way of thanking you. Oh, yes. I love drugs, she says as you march toward the bar. It's something we have in common, you say. Have you ever noticed how all the good words start with D? D and L? You try to think about this. You're not sure what she's driving at. The Bolivians are singing their marching song, but you can't quite make out the words. You know, drugs, delight, decadence, debauchery, you say, catching the tune now. Dexedrine, delectable, deranged, debilitated. And L, lush and luscious, languorous, lazy, libidinous. What's that, she says. Horny. Oh, she says, and casts a long, arching look over your shoulder. Her eyes glaze in a way that reminds you precisely of the closing of a sandblasted glass shower door. You can see that the game is over, though you're not sure which rule you broke. Possibly she finds H words offensive and is now scanning the dance floor for a man with a compatible vocabulary. You have more, down and depressed, lost, and lonely. It's not that you're really going to miss this girl who thinks that decadence and dexedrine are the high points of the language of the Kings James and Lear, but the touch of the flesh, the sound of another human voice. You know that there is a special purgatory waiting for you out there, a desperate half-sleep which is like a grease fire in the brain pan. The girl half waves as she disappears into the crowd. There's no sign of the other girl, the girl who would not be here. There's no sign of Tad Allagash. The Bolivians are mutinous. You can't stop the voices. Here you are again, all messed up, and no place to go. It is worse than even you expected. Stepping out into the morning, the light is like a mother's reproach. The sidewalk sparkles cruelly, visibility unlimited. The downtown warehouses look serene and rested in this beveled light. A taxi passes uptown and you start to wave, then realize you have no money. The car stops, you jog over and lean in the window. I guess I'll walk after all. Asshole! The cabbie leaves rubber. You start north, holding your hand over your eyes. A bum
is sleeping on the sidewalk, swathed in garbage bags, and he lifts his head as you pass. "God bless you and forgive your sins," he says. You wait for the cadge, but that's all he says. You wish he hadn't said anything. As you turn away, what is left of your olfactory equipment sends a message to your brain. The smell of fresh bread. Somewhere they are baking bread. You see bakery trucks loading in front of a loft building on the next block. You watch as bags of rolls are carried out onto the loading dock by a man with a tattooed forearm. This man is already at work, so that regular people will have fresh bread for their morning tables. The righteous people who sleep at night and eat eggs for breakfast. It is Sunday morning and you've not eaten since... when? Friday night. As you approach, the smell of bread washes over you like a gentle rain. You inhale deeply, filling your lungs with it. Tears come to your eyes, and you are filled with such a rush of tenderness and pity that you stop beside a lamppost and hang on for support. You remember another Sunday morning in your old apartment on Cornelia Street when you woke to the smell of bread from the bakery downstairs. There was the smell of bread every morning, but this is the one you remember. You turn to see your wife sleeping beside you. Her mouth was open and her hair fell down across the pillow to your shoulder. The tan skin of her shoulder was the color of bread fresh from the oven. Slowly, and with a growing sense of exhilaration, you remembered who you were. You were the boy, and she was the girl. Your college sweetheart. You weren't famous yet, but you had the rent covered, and you had your favorite restaurant where the waitresses knew your name and you could bring your own bottle of wine. It all seemed to be just as you had pictured it when you discussed plans for marriage in New York. The apartment with the pressed tin ceiling, the claw-footed tub, the windows that didn't quite fit the frame. It seemed almost as if you had wished for that very place. You leaned against your wife's shoulder. Later, you would get up quietly, taking care not to wake her, and go downstairs for croissants and the Sunday Times. But for a long time, you lay there, breathing in the mingled scents of bread, hair, and skin. You were in no hurry to get up. You knew it was a moment you wanted to savor. You didn't know how soon it would be over, that within a year she would go back to Michigan to file for divorce. You approach the man on the loading dock. He stops working and watches you. You feel that there is something wrong with the way your legs are moving. Bread! This is what you say to him. You meant to say something more, but this is as much as you can get out. What was your first clue, he says. He's a man who served his country, you think, a man with a family somewhere outside the city, small children, pets. A garden. Could I have some? A roll or something? Get out of here. The man is about your size except for the belly, which you don't have. I'll trade you my jacket, you say. It is 100% raw silk from Paul Stewart. You take it off, show him the label. You're crazy, the man says. Then he looks back at the warehouse. He picks up a bag of hard rolls and throws them at your feet. You hand him the jacket. He checks the label, sniffs the jacket, then tries it on. You tear the bag open and the smell of warm dough rushes over you. The first bite sticks in your throat and you almost gag. You will have to go slowly. You will have to learn everything all over again.